What if I told you that planting just one wrong crop in your garden this late in the season could completely derail your autumn harvest? Most gardeners are unaware of these critical errors that can turn their late-season enthusiasm into costly disappointments. As we head into the final stretch of the growing season, I'm uncovering the 7 surprising crops you need to approach with extreme caution, plus sharing the smart alternatives that will actually deliver the abundant autumn harvest you're dreaming of. There's something, irresistible about late summer that makes even the most experienced gardeners reach for their seed packets one more time. Maybe it's the sight of empty garden beds where spring crops have finished, or perhaps it's that nagging feeling that we're somehow wasting precious growing time if we're not constantly planting something new. This late-season gardening itch is completely natural, and when approached correctly, can extend your harvest well into fall and even early winter. The benefits of strategic late-season planting are genuinely compelling. You can fill gaps left by spent summer crops, enjoy fresh vegetables when grocery store produce prices soar, and even improve your soil through cover cropping. Many cool-season vegetables actually taste sweeter and more flavorful when grown in the crisp conditions of autumn, making this period potentially more rewarding than spring gardening. However, here's where many gardeners stumble into disappointment. The unspoken truth about late-season planting is that most attempts fail, not because gardeners lack skill, but because they're fighting against fundamental biological and environmental realities. The same enthusiasm that drives us to keep planting can blind us to the harsh mathematics of remaining growing time, declining daylight hours, and the inevitable approach of killing frost. So, before we dive into specific crops to avoid, it's important to understand the 2 primary forces working against late-season success: time and temperature. The most critical calculation any late-season gardener must make is comparing days to maturity against the remaining frost-free days. And, this isn't just about counting backwards from your first expected frost date. You really need to account for the reality that as days shorten and temperatures cool, plant growth dramatically slows down. A tomato variety that matures in 75 days during the peak of summer might need 90 to 100 days when planted in late summer, assuming it survives at all. This happens because of the diminishing power of the sun. As we move through late summer and into fall, not only do days become shorter, but the angle of the sun changes, delivering less intense light energy to your plants. Photosynthesis slows, growth becomes sluggish, and many warm-season crops essentially go into survival mode rather than productive growth. Now, soil temperature presents another often overlooked challenge. While air temperatures might still seem reasonable for planting, soil temperatures can drop more quickly than many gardeners realize. Seeds that require warm soil for germination, like beans, squash, and warm-season herbs, may simply refuse to sprout when planted in soil that's already beginning its autumn cooling trend. Even if they do germinate, the cold soil shock can stunt their growth permanently, leaving you with weak plants that never recover their vigor. Tomatoes and peppers, the heartbreaking heat lovers. Nothing quite breaks a gardener's heart like watching those beautiful tomato or pepper transplants sitting in the garden, growing slower and slower as the temperatures drop, and then, just as those tiny fruits begin to form, they get killed by frost. These heat-loving crops are perhaps the most common late-season planting mistakes. Even determinate tomato varieties, which promise quick harvests, need sustained warmth to ripen properly. Peppers, well, they're even more demanding. They require not just time, but consistent heat to develop their flavor compounds. So, when you plant these crops too late, you're essentially growing expensive compost. Sweet corn, the pollination predicament. It might seem like a reasonable late-season choice, especially with shorter-season varieties, but corn presents unique challenges that make late planting particularly risky. You see, corn is wind-pollinated and requires a critical mass of plants tasseling simultaneously for good ear development. Late-planted corn often faces inconsistent pollination due to changing weather patterns. And even if you do get successfully pollinated ears, they may not have enough time to fill out completely before frost hits. Plus, corn earworms become more problematic later in the season, often destroying ears just before harvest. Winter squash and pumpkins, the long-distance runners. The appeal of fresh pumpkins and winter squash for fall decorating and cooking makes these crops tempting late-season additions. However, these are marathon crops that need a long, consistent growing season. Most winter squash varieties require 90 to 120 days to reach maturity, and unlike determinate crops that you can push with protection, squash plants need time for their fruits to properly cure and develop their storage characteristics. Late-planted winter squash often produces beautiful vines and flowers, but unfortunately, never delivers mature storage-worthy fruits. Long-season brassicas, they're really the slow developers in the garden. While, many brassicas do well in cool weather, there are certain varieties that can actually become problematic if you plant them too late. Large heading cabbages, full-size cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts all need extended growing periods to develop those signature features we love. Brussels sprouts in particular need a long season to form their sprouts, and they actually benefit from a bit of cold exposure to improve their flavor. But, if these plants haven't had enough growing time, they just won't develop proper sprouts before those hard freezes arrive. Heat-loving herbs, they're what I like to call the tender disappointments. Basil, oregano, and other Mediterranean herbs might seem like quick additions to a late-season garden, but honestly these tender perennials and heat-loving annuals really struggle when they're planted late. Basil especially becomes more and more susceptible to fungal diseases as humidity rises and temperatures start to fluctuate. Even if these herbs do manage to establish, they rarely have enough time to reach the size and productivity that makes them worthwhile before cold weather shuts them down. Bush beans are what I call the germination gamblers. While bush beans are, relatively quick to mature, they're actually pretty finicky about soil temperature and moisture conditions. Late-season bean planting often lines up with increasingly unpredictable weather patterns. Seeds planted in cooling soil may just rot before they even get a chance to germinate, especially if late summer brings those periods of excessive rainfall. And even if you get bean plants to establish, they often struggle with pod development as day length decreases and temperatures become more variable. Large root vegetables, sometimes called the underground underperformers, can be a bit tricky. Storage carrots, large daikon radishes, and full-sized beets actually require more time than many gardeners realize to develop their full size and sweetness. While these crops can definitely tolerate cool weather, they really need sufficient growing time to build up the root mass and sugar content that makes them worthwhile. If you plant these root vegetables too late in the season, they often remain small and just kinda lack the complex flavors that develop over a full growing season. So, instead of gambling on these risky late-season crops, it's a good idea to focus your energy on vegetables that truly thrive in autumn conditions. Quick maturing greens are, honestly, the absolute champions of late-season gardening. Spinach, arugula, Asian greens like bok choy and mizuna, plus cold-hardy lettuce varieties, can go from seed to harvest in as little as 30 to 45 days. These crops actually prefer the cooler temperatures and shorter days of fall, and they often produce more tender, flavorful leaves than their spring counterparts. Hardy root vegetables, when chosen carefully, can provide substantial harvest even from late plantings. Radishes are particularly reliable, with some varieties ready to harvest in just 25 days. Small turnips and Hakurei salad turnips mature quickly and become incredibly sweet after exposure to a light frost. Even carrots can work if you choose shorter varieties and focus on baby carrots rather than full-sized roots. Strategic succession planting becomes crucial in late-season gardening. Instead of planting large areas all at once, try planting smaller sections every 1 to 2 weeks. This way you can keep those harvests coming, even as growing conditions start to get a bit tougher. Also, it's a good idea to invest in season extension tools like row covers, cold frames, or low tunnels. These can really help protect your late-season crops and honestly, extend your harvest well past the first frost. Success in late-season gardening really starts with honestly assessing your specific climate and first frost date. Don't just rely on general regional averages. It's much better to keep detailed records of the actual frost dates in your own location, since microclimates can vary a lot, even just within a few miles. Your personal deadline for most late-season planting should be figured out by working backwards from your average first frost date, and it's smart to add a little extra time to account for slower growth as the light fades and temperatures drop. The rule of thumb for late-season planting success revolves around three key factors: short days to maturity, natural cold hardiness, and rapid germination. Crops that meet all three of these criteria have the highest chance of making it. So you're looking for vegetables that mature in 60 days or less, naturally handle a bit of light frost and germinate quickly, even as the soil starts cooling down. Don't just plant randomly and hope for the best. Late-season gardening really does require more strategic thinking than spring planting. Think about your goals, whether you want to keep fresh salad greens coming, have ingredients for fall cooking, or just keep your garden productive. Match your crop choices to these goals instead of trying to recreate your entire spring garden in miniature. The key to abundant autumn harvests isn't about planting everything you can squeeze into the remaining season. It's all about making smart, strategic choices that work with natural seasonal changes, instead of fighting against them. Focus on crops that honestly thrive in fall conditions, give them the right protection and care, and you'll find that late-season gardening can actually be even more rewarding than spring planting. Hey, remember to subscribe to Smart Garden for more strategic gardening insights that help you work smarter, not harder, in your garden. And, if you found this guide helpful, share it with other gardeners who might be tempted to make these costly late-season planting mistakes. Your garden success is our success, and together we can grow better, more productive gardens all year round.